I think the time for heroes, like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or even Kennedy is gone. I think the time now is for the corporations. I think this is where the transformation is coming from. And that's why I was so excited on coming to speak with you, because I actually think that world can lead the way. This is where the power is. So power plus care will contribute to the transformation of the world.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My guest today is Sophie McLean. Sophie is a French citizen born in Algeria, educated in Morocco and France, with a professional career in the USA and the UK. Sophie has had an eventful life. She's been a helicopter pilot, a teacher, a designer, a relief worker, a war refugee, and a CEO. She's been shot at, shipwrecked, and widowed. She's lived on a farm, a boat, a penthouse, and an ashram. I got to tell you something. Before we even go further with the video, and no matter what she's talking about, I'm already interested. So I hope you are too, because that background alone. As a wisdom teacher, Sophie has spent decades leading transformational seminars to over 80,000 people around the world, of all ethnicities, ages, religions, and social backgrounds, all engaged in the universal existential question of who and what am I? And what is my life about? Now, I had the pleasure, this is not in a bio, but I'll jump in. I had the pleasure of taking one of these seminars with Sophie 20 years ago. So I can definitely vouch for her amazing work there. Now, after 7 years in France, Sophie McLean is in New York to begin Act 3 of her life, speaking, consulting, writing, and teaching courses and online seminars within the framework of access to awareness. Her seminar topics span both human and metaphysical dimensions, deconstructing automatic ego, consciousness, freedom, love, stress, anxiety, fear, relationships, health, sex, money, ownership, spirituality, creation and evolution, the feminine and the masculine, being responsible and making a difference in the world and being effective at it. Of her transformational teaching style, Sophie says, I engage people in a rigorous review of their life and systematic questioning of their conclusions on the basis that without examining our network of ideas, beliefs, social and cultural judgments, and our assumptions about the world, those are transformed into constraints. My interest in the nature of what it means, my interest is in the nature of what it means to be human. And that's an interest of mine as well. And what I think you're going to love is how that we're going to tie that into deals, because there is a relationship which you may not yet see. Sophie's new book, The Elegance of Simplicity, is a compelling, thought-provoking work of autobiographical fiction, one that communicates life-altering concepts, proposing an effortless pathway to awareness. It is a deeply honest and dramatic story of self-discovery about what is possible when you take responsibility, own your power, and become one with life. Definitely listen, check out the bio in the show notes. The full bio is there. I am so excited to have Sophie on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Corey. It's great to be here.
Well, listen, like I said, I mean, it's funny. We reconnected, Sophie and I, just in the last year or two when she came to the National Speakers Association meeting. I hadn't seen her since I had taken that amazing program with her about 20 years ago. And I'm excited to have her on the show and talk about what she's doing now and how some of these concepts of awareness, self-discovery, and relate to everything in our lives, including deals. But before we go there, I want to take you back, Sophie, and to when you were a little girl growing up, 8, 10, 12 years old. What did you want to be? Because my guess is it may not be, you might not have thought back then that your life would be ending up where it is now, but who knows? So what did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Corey, I actually wanted to be, until the age of 12, I wanted to be an ambassador. I do not know why. I had the vision to go traveling the world and talk about peace and making people agree with each other until I was 12. And then at 12, I had a gift, one of those moments when you don't know where it comes from, but it alters your life forever. And I had an experience of the illusion of the material reality of the life as we know it. And then my life was never the same after that.
Wow. So, well, we're going to get into that more, I'm sure, in later discussions. But before that, one other question about the past. I mean, now, you are, a writer and a speaker and doing courses, as an entrepreneur. What was your first real business, however you define that?
Oh, my first real business was when my husband passed. I was 28, and he was the owner of Oxford Airport in England. There was 800 employees. We sold and bought planes and helicopters, and we trained pilots. And my husband died very suddenly, and he was older than me, and I had to take it over. So from somebody that I was designing jewelry at the time, and then in 1 week after my husband's passed, I took over the airport for 2 years until I sold it.
Wow. What an experience. So you ended up taking over business and selling it. So let's talk a little bit about that a little later. But first I want, we definitely gave some information about you in the bio, but tell us a little bit more about, exactly what you're doing now and who are the types of people you work with. And then we'll sort of go back to that deal experience and discuss that.
Well, Corey, for the last 8 years, I went on a spiritual quest, right? I withdrew from the world and stopped leading seminars and working as I was. And I literally went on a spiritual quest thinking, I'm getting on with age. I'm nearly 60, I'm 59. And I thought, that would be it for me. I would write books and engage in awareness for myself. But there is this strength in me, this kind of energy that pushed me to go back. And I had this profound conviction that it is possible to create a new culture for humankind and that it is time to do it, because I did trained as a philosopher, and I did my thesis on Homer in the Iliad and l'Odyssey. And that was 8th century before Christ, and human being has not evolved since then. Everything else has. Technology, medicine, everything else has except human being. And we have now such a technology at our, what's the word? We can use so much technology, and it's so powerful that it is now time for human being to transform and remember who they really are, because it's getting a bit dangerous. The equivalent is giving the key to your car to your 5 years old. You would never do that. So I came back. I came back to New York. Created a company. It's called Access to Awareness. And literally, this is all I'm doing. I am educating people, teaching the teachers, coaching the coaches, leading the leaders. I am educating everybody that is interested in what is possible with awareness. And what is possible is shifting from surviving to being alive. This is the big shift.
I love that, from surviving to being alive. And it's something I really believe in. And it's, it's funny. I've been talking a little bit. I just got back from Sweden, and I was up in the ice hotel, which is sort of a bucket list item for me. Whether it's just sort of pursuing experiences like that, or, even the way I build and grow my business. Mm-hmm. Acutely aware of how many people are just, are going through the motions in life and aren't, there's some people who don't even believe they have the ability to affect their lives. And then even those that do, I don't think we realize the extent of human possibility.
That's right. And when you say they don't even realize, for me, that's the key. That's exactly what you said. It's because if you're in survival, you are reacting to a danger, right? So if you face with a lion, for example, you will either attack, run away, or freeze. So imagine being in survival mode your entire life, your entire day. Then you have to make yourself unconscious to not experience the suffering that comes with the survival. So yes, people don't even know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, some of the concepts I talk about in my authentic negotiating book, which comes from a very different place than most negotiating training, which is all about tactics and techniques and counter tactics. And, you say this if they say that. The main things that I talk about are, that stand in the way, for example, of being a great negotiator are things like being in your ego, fear, scarcity, not owning your value, not feeling like you're enough, all of this internal work. So I am very interested in the work you're doing because I believe, when people do my negotiating stuff, they're sort of surprised that I'm coming from an internal place around, your deepest feelings and fears and that kind of stuff, as opposed to, some tactical place. And it's fundamentally where I believe truth lies. So, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, Corey, I read most of your book preparing for this conversation with you. I wanted to know what you believed, and I was so inspired because it's exactly the work of awareness, right? So the whole world of survival is called the ego. Many people make a mistake about the ego. People think that the ego is being arrogant or being a jerk or being forceful, but no, the ego encompasses the whole of the world of survival. So you can very well survive by winning, we each in our survival mechanisms, we have a winning side and a losing side, or a winning side and a destructive side. And I could hear you addressing all of it, right? So the source of the ego is fear and anxiety. This is fear arises when you cross the boundary of the known, uncertainty, not knowing is very anxious and it's very frightening for people. So then the survival mechanism gets kicked in. So yes, inside of what you're interested in, right, the deal, if the source, the beginning of the deal is inside of fear, then everything you talked about will ensue, like scarcity, doubts, wanting to prevail, wanting to win over the other one. And it will become survival. And that is damaging, very damaging. This is most of the world we live in. And this is a source of the unhappiness and suffering of people.
And it's interesting, Sophie, because I know, it may be easy for a lot of people to see the unhappiness and suffering in people who live in parts of the world where they're starving and, war-torn regions and et cetera. But, in the quote unquote Western world, in the, let's take, where I am in the US, in the entrepreneurial world, where people are, comparatively successful, quote unquote, in terms of obviously, their financial situations and being able to live in a way that they might not be immediately threatened by, let's say, war or famine or disease. There's a perception that they're not in survival, right? And I've actually. I even take entrepreneurs who are building businesses and doing deals, and they think, and there may be a perception that, oh, look, this, person just did this, acquisition or joint venture, his company's growing, that is so far from being in survival. But yet, I think you might have a different view of it. Yes?
I have. That's what I was talking. You see this winning side of survival, if you make a deal, if you prevail, if you make money, then you feel good because you won, right? But we live in a world of duality. The survival world is a world of duality. So then in the next moment or the next days or the next weeks, you will have the consequence of having had that survival. So it all comes with the unconsciousness about money, right? People do not know what the source of their relationship to money is. Is it the ego or is it yourself, capital S? And that is what will make the whole difference. Because if it is the ego with a winning and losing mechanism, then your entire life will be about money. That you are poor or that you are rich, your entire life will be about money. And I don't care what anybody says. I love money like everybody else. I love luxury. I love being comfortable. But my life will never be about money because it is too small. Money is a human creation. It's not real. It's a collective agreement. So if you make your life about money, then you will suffer.
You know, it's fast. I mean, this is something I've studied a lot, Sophie, and I love you bringing it up because yes, money is a social construct, right? It's made up. So we can give it any meaning we want or no meaning at all. And one of the things that shifted my relationship to money, and I did a lot of work around this, was some of Lynn Twist's work, around the soul of money. And Lynn was the head of strategic funding, basically the head fundraiser for the Hunger Project many years ago when I used to be active in it. And I remember it was before Lynn had any of her books, courses out. And there was, I'm dating myself a bit, but there was a cassette tape that we had of a recording of an NPR radio interview that Lynn had done. And we all would copy this tape and listen to it. And Lynn talked about how money is, basically spiritual energy. And if you let it flow, then it's healthy. If you hold on to it, from that kind of energy, it sort of pools and it festers like stagnant water. And she, so I won't get into all of her work, but I got to tell you something. That was, I don't know, 35 years ago or something. And, 30 years ago. And it was one of the things that started having me shift my relationship to money. And between that and other work, I've seen it in a different way. And what it's caused me, to happen for me is that it flows into and through my life to my highest ideals, which is a very different approach to money than most people have.
Indeed. And, I'll quote Lynn, which I have met also, I have a lot of respect for. She said something also that stuck with me forever. She said the purpose of wealth is the same as the purpose of your life. And that for me said, all right, well, there it is. If my life is about making a difference, if my life is about people remembering who they really are, if my life is about ending suffering, this is what the purpose of money is for me. And can you imagine, Corey, if everybody asked themselves just that question? That's what awareness is, right? Just what is the purpose of my life? And I need to align the purpose of money with the purpose of my life. Then you will access a space of abundance naturally with no effort. Now, of course, you need to get clear on the purpose of your life, right? So it needs some internal self-inquiry. You can't just create it that way. This is a work of awareness that fortunately, it's getting more and more common now that people are actually examining their life. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me. I've seen so many of my colleagues in business, grow their businesses, do deals, grow organically. Be driven by various things to grow, and then they achieve their, let's say, their monetary goal, or they don't. But let's take the ones that even do, and then they find themselves unhappy. Right? They're running a $10 million, $50 million, $100 million company, whatever it is, and they're sort of like, okay, great, now what? Right? What am I here for? And it raises two things. I mean, one last thing that Lynn talked about a lot is how early in her years she had the most trouble being compassionate for the rich because she was looking to raise money, and they, people wouldn't write a check to the organization, and she would be like, "You have $1 billion." And what she realized was it wasn't a matter of that; it was a matter of their relationship to money, right? And they had all kinds of just because you have money doesn't mean you have a healthy relationship to it. And similarly, just because you've built a quote unquote successful business in terms of some metrics doesn't mean that it brings you joy or happiness or is fulfilling for you in your life. And that's one of the reasons why I always, when people come to me to do deals, the first thing I ask them is why.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Greek called the human tragedy, right? This constant lack that we experience. It's never enough. That is the source, the sign of the survival. It's never enough. So we always want more inside of the ego.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about, so, we've alluded here with, and this affects every part of life, right? It affects, I mean, we can obviously tie it to deals, we can tie it to business, but, if you're not, if you're in a place of ego, if you're not in a place of awareness, if you don't, I mean, listen, my wife just published a book called The Calling. It's all about finding your purpose, right? So it's in line with what we're talking about here. So how do people go about, because, so many people do live that unconscious life, so many people who are, good people and think, and basically, society, following what our societal paradigms say and doing well at that game, and then find out that they're not really, truly happy, or they're, still figuring out their purpose when they might have even financial success and wealth. How do people go about doing that? How do people get aware?
But the first thing is to be able to tell the truth, right? So that is always the first step, Corey. It's exactly what you say. First, you have to tell yourself the truth. I might have a great life. I might have, it looks great from the outside, but I'm not satisfied. I am not fulfilled. And the question that then arises, what is my life about? How come I'm not satisfied? And what is the meaning of it all? And what do I do now? That's where it starts, to have the authenticity to ask yourself those questions. And then you look around, right? And fortunately, as much as we're dealing with upheaval in the world and war and suffering and difficult thing to be with, directly correlated to that side, there is a groundswell movement about people seeking awareness, seeking the spiritual, seeking even physics, with the quantum physics is revolutionizing our view of the universe, right? So whichever way you want to do it, you can start meditating, you can go and see teachers, you can read books. There is so many things available out there, Corey. It just depends. For example, I met with somebody yesterday that is a businessman, and he's very pragmatic, very logical. So I sent him towards quantum physics. Quantum physics is revolutionizing our view of the universe, because instead of saying that everything is made of atoms, it says that no, even atoms are made of consciousness. Everything is about consciousness. So he could hear this language. People could come to me with access to awareness. I'm very pragmatic, very logical, and I teach. That means I literally teach. I designed a 1-year course, 5 weekends, so that people can practice. I literally teach awareness. But there is many other ways. And your podcast is one of the way, right? You have people think consciously. That's where it starts.
It's interesting that you raised the quantum physics thing, because my listeners know this. I've mentioned it in other episodes. I mentioned it, I think, in my book as well. And it's been fascinating to me what's happened with that, because as somebody who has studied Eastern spiritual philosophy, amongst other things, and has done some meditation and understands, to the level I do, the conversation of consciousness. Mm-hmm. Look at what has happened. There used to be this perceived split between spirituality and science, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were supposedly on opposite ends of a conversation. And now when you look at quantum physics and the fact that, no, we don't have matter. Like when I was a kid, forget atoms. When I was a kid, we had matter. It was supposedly matter and energy, right? Like the table that my microphone's sitting on was matter. Well, no, that's energy in a different, vibration, right? Mm-hmm. So everything is energy. And so the coming together of this conversation of energy and consciousness in science and spirituality is fascinating to me.
It is, because you adopt that, then you see the whole thing as energy, right? Emotions are energy, feelings are energy, everything is energy. Then you have access to, so you are energy, right? So then you want to master that energy so that you can create what you want. It's very exciting for me to connect to all that, because erase any victimization possible, and I don't like being a victim in any way, shape, or form. So when people can get the beauty of being responsible, meaning the source of their life, I find that elating.
And what's interesting, I think that concept is so appealing to entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders because, there is a part of pretty much all of them that I know that rejects the conversation of victim and believes in this concept of controlling your own destiny. Mm-hmm. But they, in some cases, or a lot, I think there's an ego part of that. Like they understand the concept, but they believe in the concept, but it doesn't necessarily. There's a deeper conversation layer on it that I think some of them could, benefit from.
I think you use the word that makes the difference between conscious and unconscious. You use the word control. Mm-hmm. If you try to control anything, then you go to the world of the ego. You see, the world of the spiritual, the world of consciousness, the world of awareness is letting go. This is what gives you access to a spiritual life and an aligned life. And letting go is not control.
And the thing for me, and I'd love your take on this, because for me, a big part of that conversation of the willingness to let go comes down to another word that I think is crucial here, which is the conversation of trust, right? Like being comfortable, whether it's being comfortable in the unknown or understanding that things are not linear. And, if you get connected to, I look at it as source or the inner truth or whatever you want to call it, consciousness. Sometimes the path you are being shown or the energy that, you're drawn to is very illogical in our linear paradigm. And so the ability to trust that, for me makes a big difference. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it does. Well, my thoughts is there is this golden rule that I obey blindly, which is you always reap what you sow.
Yes.
So every single time I do not produce the results I wish to produce, I get to the source of it by being responsible and letting go, right? So before in my life, I used to use force. I'm somebody that I could use force and produce some results. So if a door was closed in front of me, I would take a hammer and destroy it, right? But that was long ago, Corey, right? I'm now so aware. But little by little, I learned first that it was exhausting. Secondly, that it cost me a lot of my relationships and cost me my self-respect. So as I moved through the years, I learned about this letting go, which is nothing like giving. It's not letting go is different than giving up for me. Letting go is literally going with the flow of life and versus going from what do I want to what does life want from me. And when you connect to at that level to what wants to happen, there is no control to have. There is just going into that flow. And then things arise naturally with abundance and ease and grace.
So what is it, do you think, I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I'd love to hear it from you on what, I mean, our whole, I'll just make a statement. You can tell me whether you agree with it and then, help dig into it. I think the entire paradigm we live in is actually pushing, totally against everything you just said, and whether it's the educational system, whether it's we're taught about in business about being analytical and hustling and just putting in the work and breaking and busting down doors and all that stuff. So what has it be? If you agree with that, what has it that paradigm is in place, and what I mean, this is a big question, but what is it going to take to shift that?
The paradigm, I think, Corey, the paradigm is in place because at the beginning of time, if you look at the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, we need energy to survive, right? And we don't have an inner system of producing energy. We depend to the outside. So the plants depend on the sun and the animal kingdom need to go and get their energy through food and water So at one point, that model got shifted to the beingness of human being, right? We're obviously part of the animal kingdom. And at one point, it became ontological. That means the same survival need for energy got transferred from physicalness to ontological, which is a realm of being, what it is to be a human being, like the quantum energy, the spiritual energy. So we cut ourselves off from the spiritual, and then we left with this need for energy. And it's a feeding frenzy on each other. This is the last few centuries. If you look at human being, it's a feeding frenzy of domination, control, winning over people, trying to get more, trying to make it. And it's now, I really believe it. I think it's now going to shift to a new revolution of spirituality, because it's not working. So what is going to cause that shift or allow for that shift is literally remembering who we are through awareness. This is all it takes. It's just to get the cost of the way we have been and just be open in that leap of faith you're talking about to create a world where everything is possible for everybody.
I love that. Let me shift gears a little bit. So you had mentioned when we were talking about earlier in the show about the unfortunate passing of your husband when you were young, and then you taking over this business and then selling it a couple of years later. I don't know how far you were into a lot of this work that you're doing now at that time. But is there anything in terms of your experience of doing that deal and how this work might have played into it, or if you weren't as into it, how you might have done something differently? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's actually I wasn't at all in the world of I am in now, but I was because my husband had values. For example, his company had a profit sharing scheme and all the employees benefited. And he was the kind of person that understood fundamentally that there was a possibility for everybody to win. And that if only one person won and the other one lost, it would never work, right? So he actually trained me in it. So when he died, I had 4 stepchildren, and he left me responsible for the entirety of the finance and the business, meaning I had every say in the matter. And I wanted to honor him and what he stood for. And I think it was really what drove me, but I managed to sell the airport. I refused 5 buyers because they would not take care of the employees the way my husband had taken care of them. So it was very frightening for me because I had those 4 stepchildren and I was responsible for them getting their inheritance. And I didn't quite know what I was doing. But where I stood was integrity of respecting what my husband stood for. Which meant everybody could win. And, I stood 2 years later. It was a company from Denmark came, made an offer for the airport in Oxford, and they agreed to put in the contract that they will go on with a profit sharing scheme and do everything they needed to do for the employees. And this is one of the things I'm most proud of in life is that I managed to sell the airport, take care of 800 employees and my 4 stepchildren with not one fight.
Mm.
And 2 months later, the entire aviation industry crashed. 2 months later, I know. But the people that bought it had enough fun to survive it, but I would have never survived it by myself.
Oh, so it was perfect timing because not only did obviously were you able to sell it before it might have actually going out of business even, right? But
Yes.
but people kept their jobs, and you had the right buyer in place who could continue it even through the tough times.
And that comes back to what we were talking to you about, aligning with what wanted to happen from the universe, right? I promise you, Corey, I was 28, widowed, desperate, and I really didn't know much of what I was doing. The only place I stood was to honor my husband's work and deal with integrity and taking care of people. So I think there is a possibility of being in business, making deals, and even if with power and care. I think the distinction, caring for other human beings, being aware enough to know that we're dealing with human beings with all their suffering and their fear and their anxiety and their hopes and their dreams, the two together is the answer for me, power and care.
Love it. So tell us a little bit more about this new book you have out, The Elegance of Simplicity.
So I didn't know how to come back into making a difference life and come back into working. So I thought a book would help. And I started writing about my path from birth to where I am now. With an intention that people would understand the very design of the ego. And my principle in life is that you reap what you sow, right? And the more you give, the more you receive. So I always give everything. So in that book, I have put everything I've learned throughout my life. And I've wrote it in using the ancient art of storytelling so that people can get into the story as well. But mainly it is a full description of the ego and the way to get out of it.
I love it. And I got to tell you something, there's so much for us to learn in life, but that single lesson, and just even understanding, as you said earlier in the show, about even what the ego is, right? It's not just that arrogance, etc. It's really this identity, right, that we have that and it could be a really false identity and keep us from knowing our true selves. Just understanding that, and then understanding how to come from a different place alone. If nobody ever learned anything else, that alone would make a big difference in so many people's lives and in the world. Yeah.
We'll get there. I don't know when, but people are waking up.
I believe that as well. I do. I believe that as well. And it's interesting because my wife and I have these conversations all the time. And, she, like I am, very aligned with your philosophy. And we've seen various challenges around the world and, in the U.S. and elsewhere. And it's easy to focus. It'd be interesting to talk about that for a moment as well, because it's so easy to focus on what's quote unquote going wrong, what's bad, the suffering people are, and at the same time, it is galvanizing a lot of people to wake up. But even some of those people, and I have a conversation with a lot of my activist friends, and I consider myself an activist, where they're often spending a lot of time fighting against X. And their whole focus is on that negativity, is on that problem all the time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that and how that relates to awareness as well?
Oh, you have such great question, Corey. I had the same thought than you, right? Do I go and actually take action to help children in conflict zone, or what is the best difference I can make? And the best difference one can make is to educate oneself in awareness, right? Because it starts where we are. That is the most impactful way to make a difference in the world. But also in parallel to that is, I'm not saying to stop helping people, right? But help is limited and will not transform the very culture of what it is to be human. That is what will make a difference. A lasting, profound difference is to actually get to the source of the suffering, not to deal just with the suffering. And then the other thing I want to say for people, because I have a lot of my students that have a lot of difficulty watching the suffering of others, right? We're so privileged in the West. And when you look at what's happening in the world, your heart can sink. But there is a place to come from, and it's a place of love. And I'm not talking about feelings or emotions of love, but this energy, this consciousness we were talking about, Corey, the access to consciousness is through the space of love. So wherever you are, there is love. It's a place you come from. This is what is the access to consciousness. And that is a way to be in the face of all this suffering. It's not to make it wrong, not to go against it, but to bring the space of love. And again, I want to stress, it's got nothing to do with feelings or emotion. It is really a stand you take. And somebody said to me, only light will make that darkness disappear. And that bringing the space of love is what is needed. This is what Gandhi did, and it worked.
No question. And it's interesting for me because I think that, I look at myself as an activist, and a lot of some of my sort of on the ground activist friends think that my role in business and being a lawyer and working with companies is actually, against being an activist because they have a certain view, right? And each to their own. I have no judgment of anybody else, but I actually think, companies play a big role in our world, right? And companies are fundamentally made up of individuals, and we see the move of a lot of companies moving into the socially conscious business space, and we see a lot of the younger generation looking much more closely about the values and the ways companies that operate, and whether it's through their corporate social policies outside, how they treat their employees or how they do their deals. I actually think that companies can make a big difference in this conversation.
Well, I not only agree with you, but I will go even further, Corey, because I think the time for heroes, like Gandhi, Martin Luther King, or even Kennedy is gone. I think the time now is for the corporations. I think this is where the transformation is coming from. And that's why I was so excited on coming to speak with you, because I actually think that world can lead the way. This is where the power is. So power plus care will contribute to the transformation of the world.
Oh, I love that. Mm-hmm. Sophie, if people are interested, and I'm sure they will be, in reading your book or hearing more about your course or how how to work with you, what's the best way for them to find out more about you?
The best way is to go to my website. I've tried to design a website that is easy to see, but where everything is there. So it's my name, sophiemclean.com, and you will find everything there.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure they could find the book on all the usual.
There is not only the book, but there is also excerpt from the book and excerpt from the audio book. So
excellent.
You can even have samples.
Excellent. So that's great. All right. And my final question I always ask on every episode of the podcast, which is, it's funny in this case, I feel like it's everything we've been talking about already, but I'll ask it anyway, which is that, one of my highest values is authenticity. And for me, authenticity is not some sort of external morals. It's really this conversation of connecting to inner truth, which I think is actually connected to source or, energy, whatever you want to call it. So one of the things I always ask business owners is how they connect to, what authenticity means to them and how it impacts their life and business decisions.
Okay, very good. Well, my business, Access to Awareness LLC, I make sure that my business is a material expression of my soul. So I have a profound experience of my calling, my life mission, and I don't care if it's true or not for the people that are a bit doubtful on this call. Even if I make it up, this is my life mission. I give my life for people to remember who they really are, and every action and program and employee and speaking I take is consistent with my soul mission. And I sleep very well at night and I have no stress and I have no attachment either. So it works. I recommend it to everybody.
I think, if we had time and we don't, we could spend another 30 minutes or an hour just talking about that last thing you said about no stress and no attachment, because, one, I can't, the far majority of people out there wouldn't even don't even have a concept of what it would be like to have no stress. And second of all, this concept of attachment and all the things we're attached to, whether it's physical things, whether it's, our view of ourselves, which is an ego conversation. So, we can get into all that, but just why don't you, I can't let that go by without, acknowledging that there could be hours discussion on that. I'd like to at least have you expand on that just a little bit.
All right. Well, stress is a biological reaction to fear, and fear is confronting danger in the present. So fear is very good. Fear is, if you get attacked by a rhinoceros, you want to have fear, stress, and move fast. That's great. Anxiety is thinking of what might possibly happen in the future. So it's a story. That is the illusion of the ego. And anxiety can also give rise to stress, but then it goes on and on and on and on. And that is when it's damaging, because it's got an enormous impact on your biological body, right? So the delicious thing about awareness is that it has anxiety disappear, because you don't live in the future looking at the past. Awareness allows you to live in the present, moment by moment. So anxiety disappears, stress disappears.
I love that. And folks, there's a much deeper conversation about that, but I think that I think it's another reason to check out Sophie's work, because I know most people I know, in fact, many of the quote unquote successful people I know live with a high level of stress, and I think there's a deeper conversation on, we easily attribute stress to the fact, that we're busy or we have these challenges or whatever. And there's a much deeper conversation on where really stress comes from. And Sophie just had the opportunity to touch on that a little bit. So I think it's an incentive to definitely delve much more into our work as well. And
Corey, if I may say something, I'm in my commitment to impact the world, I've designed a one-on-one course, private, for the entrepreneurs, businessmen, leaders that wants to get the answer to that questions. I've designed it specifically for them, because I believe that the world of business, corporation, and industry is going to lead the way. So do come and check my website.
I love it. That's so perfect. Sophie, thanks so much for being on the show.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
And thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor, other than that the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals, and then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.